Okay, hello everybody. I'm back with the second installment of Chess Mentor series that I'm doing. Um, in this particular position, um, it's called doing it the old-fashioned way. Well, what we're talking about here is um, it's black to move here. So go ahead and pause your videos and try to figure out the solution. Okay, back from the video pause. What we're talking about here is normally um, players will use a couple of guidelines when they're playing king and pawn endings. They'll use the rule of the square to determine if their king's close enough to stop a passer, or they'll also use opposition to determine if they can penetrate positions or keep the enemy king out, etc. But in this case, sometimes when it gets really messy like this, you have to rely on your fingers and toes. You have to do it the old-fashioned way, and you actually have to calculate and count everything. So in this position, White's c6 pawn is definitely a menace, and b6, if black played b6, it wouldn't really help. It would solidify that area of the board. So he takes the pawn. Black just gets rid of that pawn right off the bat. White takes the b pawn so that he can create an outside pass pawn. And notice that pawn is going to move up 2 squares. So if we know the rule of the square, where we draw a diagonal to the queening side of the pawn and we make a box, then that's the rule of the square. If the king wants to stop this pawn on a2, that's going to next move be on a4, then he has to make sure that he can get in this box. So actually he can. So once white plays a4 here, if black moves on the f file this move, then he'll be able to get inside that square. So he plays king f7. So that now when white plays a4, he'll be able to get inside the square we just talked about. It's called the rule of the square. So a4, so he must get in the square. So we remember where the square was. If not, I'll do it again without drawing all the pretty boxes. Basically, this is it. So anywhere in that box, and he's able to do it. He chooses e6, which is as much inside that box as e7 is. And it's kind of neat because a lot of times these zigzag moves with the king, instead of going in a straight line toward the passed pawn, sometimes these zigzag maneuvers can be helpful because the king can feint like he's going one direction and then reverse back to another direction. But in this case, he does need to get over there and stop that pawn. Now here he wants to sit on the position as long as he can, so he plays h6 because he needs to be thinking about creating a passed pawn of his own. Well, now he must get in the box, so king c8 stays in the box. And now he must move to b8 because white's threatening to play a7 and cut the king off. If white plays a7 here, then these squares will be controlled by white, and black won't be able to approach the pawn, so he must play over. So white sacrifices the pawn in order to remove this outside pawn. But now we see that after the black's next move, g5, that we draw a box, and we see that white's king cannot get inside of this box or this square. So he'll play hg, and we see that he's not able to get inside the box, so we're able to see it in where he's not able to stop the pawn. Okay, next position. So that's called the rule of the square. Okay, this is a very fantastic position. It's called lockdown. So go ahead and pause your video. Okay, now black has a problem because white has this beautiful outside pass pawn on h4, and stopping it is very problematic. Let's see. I hadn't even considered these moves, so let me make a variation here. If this was to occur, or were to occur, now you can see that this blockade's not going to work because the bishop will come here and force black to lose the blockade. He'll be able to force white will be able to force h7 in. So that idea doesn't work. So black has to look for something else, otherwise he's going to lose. The king idea doesn't really help. I haven't analyzed this, so forgive me if I don't get this exactly right, but it just seems like black would be tied down now to this pawn. White doesn't even have to play like that. I mean, white can just push the pawn at some point. The point is this bishop that's on b3 has suddenly become active in participating in helping that pawn. So that doesn't really help black achieve a draw. It just makes black have a passive position at that point. But black has a way to achieve a draw here. He plays the move c5, taking advantage of the passive bishop on b3. So there's only one move here, king a5. So now the c5 move has done its job. It's pretty much put the black king in lockdown mode. So king c7, h5, b6, and then there's only one move for white again. These are forcing moves, and the king guards that square. So now white is in a bad situation. Now pushing the pawn to h6 would be a mistake. It may look like it may look appetizing to push that pawn, but after the bishop drops back, king goes up, and then king to b7, we can see that bishop to d7 is going to be checkmate. So for example, he almost queens and then he gets checkmated. But back in this position, instead of playing the move where you push the pawn up here, white can avoid losing by playing his bishop back and giving his king the b3 square to escape via a4. So bishop b1 or d1, and then bishop c8, king b5, and now if king b7, like we did before, that would be a blunder. Now, because since the bishop has moved off of b3, then king a4, and now the bishop check. See, if the bishop was still here, that would be checkmate. But now that it's moved, the king can come out over here, and now white is really going to be able to queen that pawn. With h6, bishop h5, h6, h7 even. I don't even think the bishop can get the black bishop can't even get over there in time now. So the best that after bishop d1, the best that black can hope for is a perpetual. But that's good enough. I mean, that way he doesn't have to get. He's not losing. He doesn't have to worry about stopping the pawn because he's able to create a perpetual. Next position. Okay, in this position, it's white to move. Okay, go ahead and pause your video. Okay, back from the video pause. In this position, it's white to move. He has to calculate the bishop sacrifice on h2. So if we look at the bishop sacrifice on h2, and also his rook on a1 is hanging. So should he play g3? Should he play f4? Should he play h3? I mean, how should he defend? All those moves lose the rook. So bishop b2 seems like the only practical choice, completing your development. But you have to foresee, I mean, are you going to get mated or lose your rook? So there must be a defense to bishop h2. Normally, sometimes anyway, white would consider going to g3 here, just to keep the queen off of h4. Very dangerous. King's kind of exposed. Not kind of, he's definitely exposed. But here the king drops back because after the queen comes to h4, oh shoot, after the queen comes to h4, white is able to jump on the diagonal here and guard h2. My mouse slipped. I made the move before I wanted to, but it's important that you're able to get on this diagonal. A lot of times you'll look at lines where you're close to the king and you're guarding h2, but in this case white correctly saw that he could put his queen on c7 and guard h2. Now if black tries to interpose and block, then white can play bishop takes. So that's why it was important to play bishop to b2, to give added support over that long diagonal and controlling the h2 square. So now knight takes bishop, queen takes knight, no problems for white, and the bishop sacrifice doesn't work. Okay, next position. Okay, I really like this position. Well, first of all, pause your video. Okay, back from the video pause. What's interesting about this position is that Tony Miles is playing. He's down. He passed away, but he was a really strong English player. I actually met him at the World Open in the bookstore. I was buying books, and he jokingly made a comment that he was in some of the books. And anyway, the knight is pinned on e4. The pawn can't move on h4, and the king can't move where the king is at right now on h1. Those are your big hints. So armed with that knowledge, if you know that, you know that if you can get rid of all your heavy pieces, it'll be a stalemate. So with that, Miles played rook f8. Rook takes rook is forced, rook takes rook, king takes rook is forced, and then queen f7. And then king takes queen is forced, and we're left with the stalemate position. A lot of times in these positions, the player playing white and trying to solve problems here will look for mates. But if you realize that you're down so much material, not only are you down a piece, but you're down a couple of pawns, your king is very exposed. G7's adequately defended. The knight is pinned and you can't use it for attack. Once you start seeing all these things, then you realize that attacking is futile, and if you start looking for these drawish themes, stalemating themes in a middle game like this, they do exist, and it's possible to find them in your own games. So I hope that that you learned something from these examples, that I wasn't too long-winded, but I'm trying to be thorough, because I want to make sure that everybody that's looking at the video is able to take something away from it. Okay, until next time, have a Merry Christmas.